Every addition to true knowledge is an addition to human power. Horace Mann. The quality of our knowledge determines the quality of our life. So making sure that we have the highest quality knowledge possible, make sure that we can live the highest quality of our life. And how to do that is what we are going to learn in today's video. Welcome to the Notion of Life series, in which we are creating the ultimate Notion system that helps you get more result with less effort. In the last video, we explored the daily review, which is a process that we can use to start and end our days with clarity and intent. In today's video, we are covering the knowledge database, which is the tool that helps us take information from the outside and inside world and turn it into high quality knowledge, which we can use to solve difficult problems and to get handsomely rewarded. Now, some practical information before we get started. You can use the timestamps in the description down below to fast forward to the parts of the video that are most interesting to you. You can also increase the playback speed if you think I'm not already talking fast enough. And all of the links, assets, and products mentioned in this video are linked in the description down below. Now, I've chosen a little bit of a different style for this video, so please let me know if this is something you like. It's a little more practical and more deep on the content, so let me know if this resonates or if you would like to see something else. Okay, so the thing that we're going to discuss today is the knowledge database, and the key goal of the knowledge database is to help us capture, distill, improve, and utilize our knowledge to create maximum value. Now, I know that sounds a little bit vague. We're going to get in what that exactly means, and we're going to do that in the following chapters. We're first going to have a general introduction in which I'm going to explain what knowledge is, why it is so important, and how we can use it to create value. Then in the second chapter, we are going to have a look at the actual knowledge database. We're going to look at all the properties, we're going to look at all the views, then we're going to go into knowledge capturing, knowledge templates, and we're ending with knowledge rating. Now, this video is going to be quite complex. I think the knowledge database is one of the most complex parts of this system. I also spent the last few weeks iterating this part of the system to be even better. But I promise you, if you implement this one, it is going to be an absolute game changer. Last note, I just had a little bit of a cold, so if my voice sounds a bit weird, just bear with me. I hope that it is doable. Okay, so let's start with the general introduction. Knowledge and information are some of the most valuable resources that we have. And the goal of knowledge is to apply it to real life situations, to modify them in such a way that we can create value. We try to manipulate the external world to solve our personal needs. So what this looks like is basically everything around us is just random blocks floating around, right? There's like tiny little particles, there's all these different things just flying around, and they don't really make any sense. So what we then want to do is we want to apply our knowledge to structure them in a way that they suit the need that we have, right? So applying knowledge is pretty much taking separate things and putting them together in a way that they make sense. Then when we have knowledge, when we have created parts of knowledge, we then want to use that to solve particular challenges. And these could be tiny challenges, right? I want to brush my teeth, or I want to record this video. I need to set up this whole infrastructure to be able to do that. But they could also be very complex challenges, right? We maybe want to combat climate change, or we want to solve world hunger or poverty, right? These are all different challenges, and no matter what the scope of the challenge is, knowledge is the thing that helps us solve these challenges. So the higher the quality of our knowledge, the more difficult challenges that we can solve. The more difficult challenges that we can solve, the more value we create, and the more value that we create, the higher the reward is that we get. Now, knowledge in our day and age has this whole extra layer added to it, because we are living in an age of information abundance. There is more information accessible to us than ever before. And just to show you that a little bit, let me just share this website with you. This is a website that shows how much data there is in the entire world measured in zettabytes. Now, that is probably a gigantuous amount of information. I'm guessing it's 1,000 terabytes. So over here, you can see that in 2010, we had 2 zettabytes of information. Now, currently here in 2023, that is already 120, right? That is 50 times as much, 60 times as much even as we had in 2010. And then the projection that they're making is that in 2025, we're almost at 100 times as much data as in 2010. So in only 15 years, we have increased the amount of data that we have accessible to all of us, almost accessible to all of us, by 100-fold, right? So this is an exponential curve that we see in the amount of data that is available to us. So if we then bring that back here to this graph, we can see that as the quantity of information is increasing, so is the variance. And what that means is that the extremes become more extreme. So there's more shittier information available than ever before, but there are also more gems available as before. And this is generally a thing when there's a scalable system, when things are exponentially scaling, the variance increases. So the extremes are further separated from each other. So this right here has a very important lesson in it, because as this variance is increasing, that means that we can create much higher quality knowledge, and we can, through that knowledge, solve much more difficult challenges and create much more value. So where we want to be is we want to be right over there, right? From this ocean of knowledge that's available, this ocean of information, we want to get that highest quality information that is accessible to us. But realistically, what is happening to most people is that they're actually going down into this shittier range, right? Because there's so much information accessible and there's so much fake news, and it's so easy to get swept away in all this bullshit that people are peddling and they're trying to sell you things. So instead of being over there, people might be over here. And the problem there is that even if it's a relatively tiny part that we're going down, in absolute numbers, it is quite big, because this is not a linear scale. Like we were saying, it's an exponential scale. So even if you're just going down a little bit, right? Let's say this is the baseline. Let's say you just go over here, minus 10. It seems like a relatively small amount, but someone who is over here is infinitely more productive, infinitely more effective, right? This gap over here, I mean, not literally infinitely, because, it's like 2 orders of magnitude, but they're so much more productive, it's ridiculous. So even if we can just go from this baseline to here with the information quality that we have, we already become so much more productive. And that is why having a knowledge database, having a knowledge process that helps us capture information, that helps us refine information, that helps us apply information is so valuable, because this right here is possible, right? Every one of us has the Library of Alexandria in our pocket. We have access to the best ideas that humans have ever developed, right? We have access to that within just like that. It's everywhere. So we could be here, but the problem is we have to learn how to navigate through this ocean of data, and we have to have systems in place that help us get closer and closer and closer. And as we get there, this is orders of magnitude, right? We're creating exponential value, and this is a really important part to understand, right? Exponential value, it's not just a little bit. It's not just a little bit more. It is so much more, we can hardly imagine that. Okay, so a last point on that, which I think is important to make, is that this is going to cause and is already causing a divide in our society, because there's going to be people that are just going to be cruising along this line and they might not see too much difference. But then there's going to be people that go curving slightly down. There's going to be people that are going to curve all the way down, and there's going to be people that are going to be curving up. And the people that are curving down, they're going to increasingly have a hard time keeping up with society. And the matter of fact is, this is just the nature of things, right? There's this one quote that I really think captures this very well. To those who have everything, more will be given, and from those who have nothing, everything will be taken, right? So people that already have a lot going on for them, they tend to get even more. Rich people get even richer. Happy people get even happier. People with a high social status get even more status. And the flip side of that is also true. People that have nothing tend to lose even more. People that have no social status tend to not find it easy to actually meet new people and connect with new people. So this is a fact of life. Now, my personal philosophy is that we as people that are, and I mean, if you're watching this, you are one of these people. We as people that are able to play the game at this level have a moral obligation to keep playing it over there, create that exponential value, and then take part of that and redistribute it to the people that won't be able to keep up. Because there is going to be a lot of people that simply will not be able to build the systems, utilize this information, break out of that chain of addictive content and people just reeling you in. So yeah, but that's my personal philosophy on life. People should do whatever they want to do. But I just wanted to throw that out there. So in a nutshell, we want to filter out the signal from the noise, just like we would want to have a clean and crisp radio. And there is more opportunity for high quality information available to us than ever before, but it requires deliberate thinking and fine-tuned systems, which is why we are taking the time to build this knowledge database. Okay, so then the next thing that we want to cover is the difference between external knowledge and internal or personal knowledge. So actually the external part, we will refer to that as information. So this is all of the information that other people have created, right? These can be podcasts, articles, books, songs, you name it. All of the information that has been generated externally. Then on the other side, we have internal information, internal knowledge. This is where we take information that we gathered from the outside world and we make it part of our own internal knowledge. So these are the ideas that we are having, the thought processes that we are having. Now, on a philosophical level, you could say this is not even self-generated because you don't choose your thoughts, right? Your thoughts just sort of present themselves to you. But for the sake of simplicity, we are just going to say this is the information that you are generating yourself. Now, ultimately, we are using external knowledge to improve and fine-tune our internal knowledge, right? We go through life every day and we're taking in all of this information. We're seeing people on the street. We're having conversations. We're reading stuff online. We use all that input to change how our own thought patterns and our own knowledge is working. And an important note to make here, and we'll go more in depth about this later, is that also the frame that we have, our own personal frame, determines what we see in the external world. Because this over here, that is like almost infinite. There's infinite information out there. We already looked at the data graph from before, but that's not even taking into consideration all the raw stimuli that we are encountering every single day. So we only get to see a fraction of that, right? We only get to see like a little bit. There's like a whole bunch of shit over there, and we only get to see like a little bit of that for our internal world. And the way we do that is we have these frames of reference, we have these perspectives, these glasses almost that we have built over our lives to only see information that is valuable to us, that is in the context of who we are trying to be. So we're filtering out like 99.99% of everything that's coming in, and we only have the stuff that is actually interesting to us. So we want to be deliberate about that practice. We really want to make sure that what we are perceiving is what we truly want to perceive, because so often we are programmed by our environment to want to see certain things, whilst that is not actually the thing that is contributing to this person that we want to be. And that is also how this entire stuff ties back into that insight work, really trying to figure out what is important to you, because that is making such a huge impact on which part of this virtually infinite information you are actually going to perceive and use. One last point over here is that the externally generated information, that one scales, right? We saw that before. This stuff is going exponentially up. There's an abundance of information over there. But the self-generated knowledge, that one stayed the same. Our capacity to generate new ideas and new information hasn't been growing exponentially over the past 100 years. So that one is very important to safeguard because this one is limited. This one is unlimited. So which resource do we want to take more careful consideration of? The limited resource, right? So it's very important to have this part figured out. And in that sense, I also think that the entire goal behind this whole knowledge database, behind this whole knowledge flow is to use this to fine-tune this. And this is the important part because this over here, we can find that. We can find that at any time, always, it's everywhere. This, on the other hand, that is a very valuable resource. That being said, let's have a look at the knowledge flow as it's used inside a notion of life. So this is how we interact with the ideas, with the information that we encounter, how we process them, and how we then utilize them to create maximal value. So the first thing that happens is that we encounter a piece of information. Now, this could be an external piece of information. This could also be an idea or something that arises. Then the first question we ask ourselves, does this pique my interest? And if it doesn't, then we ignore it. If it does, then we capture it into our system. And later on in this video, I'm going to show you how to easily capture information, but basically we're capturing this information. Then later on, we are going to empty our inboxes. So we're going to have all these captured pieces of information. And then we ask ourselves the question, does this information feel relevant? Is this something that I actually think is valuable right now, something that I actually need? If it is not, we delete it. And this is an important step because it can be very easy to just over capture, right? We have so much information coming in and we can do that infinitely. We just saw that we can keep capturing infinitely. That is not going to serve our purposes. So if it does not feel relevant, we delete it. If it does feel relevant, then we consume and distill the information. Now, an important note to make here is that this part can happen within the Notion system, but it can also happen in real time. And what I mean by that is you might simply be reading a blog post and in that moment, straight away, you already know this is relevant and I'm going to consume it right here, right now. You don't have to capture it, wait till the end of the day to empty your inbox. So you could do this part already in real time. Now, if you're wondering what this button over here does, more information, it shows you more information about this flowchart. So I will just share this one in the description and you can just go through this flowchart and read more about it. But for now, we're just gonna toggle that one off. Okay, so when we consume content, we're basically going to read through it or we're going to write it down and then we're going to capture the parts or distill the parts that are really interesting to us. So we're not going to capture the entire article, for example, but we'll just get the paragraphs that are interesting for us, right? So we're already filtering out part of this information. So then we are using these paragraphs or these podcast snippets or these parts of our idea that we wrote down as the foundation for creating a knowledge piece. And now this is the part where it really becomes our knowledge. We're uniquely creating something from all of this information on that left side. And in the first draft, we are just creating something from scratch. But later on, as you see, we can keep returning to this part of the process. We can also start transforming this knowledge. And there's a whole bunch of techniques that are inside this knowledge database, inside the knowledge templates that can help you deepen your understanding of that knowledge. So we can just keep doing this over and over again. The next thing that we then do is we process the knowledge piece. This happens inside of the inbox. So what this means is that we assign it the right context. For example, to which project is this related? We assign it maybe a knowledge classification. We also assign it later on a rating. So we're basically giving it all the metadata that it needs to make sense in the context of our system. And later on, we're also going to see what this looks like inside a notion of life, of course, right? So we assign the class, we assign the project, and that also informs if something is useful to us. Because Usually, almost always, when information doesn't fit in the context of something that we are currently doing, right? So a project that we are currently doing, for example, it's not super useful. So we want to make sure, like I mentioned earlier, we only have that limited bandwidth to focus on things. So we want to make sure that the knowledge that we're consuming is actually important to the things that we are doing right now. Okay, so now we're coming into the bit more complex territory. I'm going to explain this later on. I'm also going to show you what this looks like in the system. But the main purpose of this part of the flowchart is to keep knowledge moving. So either our knowledge is moving or it is being archived. So we don't want to have this whole database with a billion different knowledge pieces that we never get to. I think this is the number one thing that most people get wrong when they're trying to build these Notion systems or productivity systems. They're capturing everything and they're labeling everything and classifying everything. And it's, oh, I've got so much structure in all of this data that I'm never, ever, ever going to use. That is the problem, right? Because it's too much. It's too much. There's no system in place. There's no process. So either the knowledge is moving, it is active, we're actively developing something, or we archive it. And that is why we have this process over here. So the first thing that happens is if we created the knowledge piece and that knowledge piece hasn't been touched in the last 30 days, it is automatically being archived. But if we are actively still developing a knowledge piece, then something else actually happens. This part over here, I should have deleted that because it's no longer part of the system, so please ignore this. What we do with our knowledge pieces is we give them a rating. And part of this rating is intuitive, part of this rating is objective. And I will show you later how exactly that works. Now, we have different rules that see what rating score a certain knowledge piece has. So, suppose we have a knowledge piece with a rating of lower than 20, and this has been created more than 30 days ago. Then this knowledge piece will automatically be completed. But if this knowledge piece has a rating higher than 20, then the time that we have to keep iterating, to keep transforming this knowledge piece is increased. So for example, now we have 45 days. And in that time that it's increased, we can go back and keep transforming it. Now, as we're transforming it, it might become more valuable. We might also decide not to transform it, right? So this is where the distinction starts to happen. But if it is a very interesting idea and we keep transforming it, then the rating might increase. Now there is a new threshold that it needs to cross. So let's say that this knowledge piece has a rating between 20 and 50. So we've developed it a little bit, but apparently it's not that valuable. Then once again, this knowledge piece is now automatically completed. But suppose we transformed this knowledge piece and we've assigned it this higher rating and we realize actually it has a score higher than 15. Now all of a sudden this time horizon that we have to work on this knowledge piece is increased to 60 days or to 75 days. So basically what's happening here is we check how valuable a piece of knowledge really is to us, and the more valuable that it is, the more time that we spend on it. And this is all automated inside the system, so you don't have to think about this. But if something is really valuable to you, then you spend more time on it. If it's not that valuable, then it is automatically completed. And then the last step that we have in this flowchart is that we resurface information in the context that we need it, right? So we have this information, we've turned it into knowledge, now it's high quality knowledge, and now we want to have that knowledge at the right time, at the right place, because that's how we apply it to actually create value. Okay, so that is the flow of knowledge inside a Notion of Life. I will drop this flowchart in the description. You can just read through it and understand what's happening on the back end. Now, before we continue, I have a question for you, and that is, if you were to plot yourself on this information quantity quality graph, where would you say that you currently are? Would you be over here? Would you be over here? Would you be over here? Let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know how many orders of magnitude you think that you can grow and where you actually want to get to. All right, that is enough preamble and context. Now let's get into the Notion part, because I know that is what we are all here for. So the first thing that we do, of course, is we go into our database collection zone, and then we scroll down over here, and here we have the knowledge database. Now, below this, we also have the knowledge exercises database. I'm going to show you this one later because it's relevant for this. But first, we are just going to open up the knowledge database. So the first property is the action and the status. And this basically shows us what we should be doing with any given knowledge piece. Now, we have a formula over here that automates this process for us. And basically what it does is it checks the rating of a specific knowledge piece and how long ago it has been created. And based on those two variables, it tells us what the status of this information piece should be. Now, I'll open up this formula. It's quite complex, so I'm not going to explain everything very much in detail, but basically what it does is it first checks whether the rating is 1 star. If it's 1 star, that is our way to instantly complete a piece of knowledge. If we give it 1 star, it will automatically be completed. The rest of the conditions, it is checking for both the rating, but also the rating score, and then combining that with how long ago this has been created. Basically what this does is it says, when there's a 2-star rating and the score is higher than 15, then I want to keep exploring this knowledge piece. If the score is lower than 15, it's automatically completed. If we would rate it even higher on 3 stars, for example, then the score that we need is going to be even higher, but the amount of days that we have to work on this knowledge piece is also increased. And then as the rating keeps increasing, so does the amount of time that we have to work on this knowledge piece. And this is what I was alluding to earlier, that the more valuable a piece of knowledge is to us, the longer that we have to work on it. And later on, when we get into the rating part, I'm going to explain you more about this. But basically, all you need to know is that the higher the rating that we have on a piece of knowledge, the longer we can work on it. Now, the last condition that we have over here is the archived, and that is basically any knowledge that has been created longer than 30 days ago and that we haven't given a rating at all. So this is archived knowledge. Usually, we don't do a lot with this. The second property that we have is the name. So this is basically just the title of the knowledge piece. And as always, we want to use descriptive titles, make sure that everything makes sense. Then the next property is the type of knowledge. And this can be one of 3 things. Either it's a creation, which is something that we are just creating completely from scratch. This could be a brainstorm. This could be an idea. This is just us creating a piece of knowledge out of nowhere, personally, right? Internal generated knowledge. The second one is a meeting, which is where we keep track of something that is being said in a meeting, where there's multiple people together, and we basically just want to make sure that we have a log of everything that was discussed. And the third one is a learning, and this is where we take external knowledge and then turn it into our own ideas, right? So creation is everything that's just started from ourselves. Learning is everything where we learned something from an external information source. Then over here, we have the rating property. So we assign a rating to the different knowledge pieces. And most of the rating that we do is intuitive, which is where we give these stars or diamonds. And then part of the rating is objective, which is measured through the techniques. We're going to cover this later on in the video. Then over here, we have the source property, and this is basically the source from which we've gotten a certain knowledge piece. So this could be a video, a book, an article. It could be your mind, which is things that you've just generated by yourself. It could be a web page, podcast, scientific paper, social media, just the usual sources from which you could get your information. Okay, then over here, we have the techniques that we can apply to our knowledge. And if we would just go back to the flowchart real quick, that is what's happening over here. When we're transforming our knowledge, we can apply techniques to deepen our knowledge. Now, don't be overwhelmed by this. We are going to explore this in the template section of this video, but there's basically a whole bunch of different techniques that we can apply to deepen our knowledge. We can mind map, we can summarize, we can do case studies. There's all these different techniques. I'm going to show you later on how to use this. It's very important to realize that all of this looks overwhelming right now, but it's been integrated into the Notion of Life system in such a way that it takes very little effort and gets you maximal result, because that is what we're all about. Over here, the next property is knowledge classification. I'm going to make a separate video on this, but basically what this means is that we can assign a piece of knowledge to a certain class. Now, I rarely use this because I think knowledge is much better used by relating it to a project, by relating it to an active context that we are currently engaged with, because it makes it much easier to understand knowledge, because this is something that we are engaged with. This is something that makes sense to us, whereas classification, it's similar to what I was mentioning earlier, where we just classify a whole bunch of shit, but it doesn't really have that, we don't have like an active connotation to it. And I think that is why we ultimately want to link knowledge to projects, which is why we have the project tracker over here, and the project tracker is going to be covered later on in this series. Then we have the URL property, which is basically just the URL from which we've gathered any external information source. We have the created property, which is the date on which we've created the knowledge piece, followed by the date on which we've last edited the knowledge piece. And then over here, we have two more formulas that are going to make sense later on. The first formula is how many days we have left on a knowledge piece. If this is on 0, then basically that means the knowledge piece has been archived or completed. But for example, over here, you could see we have 47 more days to work on this specific knowledge piece, or 17 more days to work on this specific knowledge piece. And then over here, we also have a rating score, which is basically how valuable a piece of information is. And this rating score is a synthesis from our intuitive rating, which is the stars and the diamonds that we've assigned, in combination with the amount of techniques that we've applied to a knowledge piece, right? And together that gives a score. And like I mentioned earlier, over here we check how high is that score, and if the score is higher, then the amount of days that we have, right? The amount of days that we have is increased. So you could see this one has very high days. We have 62 days left, so that must be something with a high rating, 2 diamonds, and over here also with a high rating score. Okay. Getting into this later on, getting ahead of myself. Hope that I didn't lose you there. And yeah, this one over here, that's a legacy property. I'm not deleting it yet because I don't think we need it anymore, but I'm just keeping it there. But for now, we don't need to go into that. Okay, so let's start at the beginning with the capturing of knowledge. And I'm going to sketch a situation for you, which probably sounds familiar, in which I'm going to show you why this is so important to do. So you are out and about and you are sitting somewhere, and all of a sudden you have this idea that, oh, I really should not forget this thing to do. So you just write that down on a piece of paper. Later on, you're having a conversation with your coworker, and your coworker says something interesting, and you feel like, oh, I really need to follow up on that. And for the moment, you just archive that in your head because, you'll remember it later. In the meantime, you also saw something online that was interesting. You were reading this article online, and you just bookmark that one in your web browser and you can read it later. And the last thing that might have happened is that you have this to-do that you wanted to do, but before you forget it, you just write it on a Post-it and you stick that on your computer screen. So what happened here is that there were 4 different moments in the day where there was information that was important and relevant to you. And instead of having some unified way of capturing that knowledge, you use it on 4 different places. Now, that piece of paper that you wrote on, you probably lost that already by the time you got home. That conversation that you had with that coworker was overshadowed by the conversation that you had with your girlfriend afterwards, and you forgot all about the thing that you want to do. Now, your bookmark tab looks like absolute shit because you have a billion different bookmarks that haven't been categorized in any sort of way. And then maybe the post-it, maybe that's the only one that you got around to. So what is happening here is that all of our information is scattered, there's a lot of friction going on, and there's low trust. And the low trust part is very important because you don't trust that when you write something down, you'll actually get to it. And this causes so much anxiety. This causes so much restlessness because you're continuously thinking, did I get everything? Am I forgetting something? So instead of using our brain power to actually follow up on the things we want to do, we're continuously thinking, did I forget something? Did I need to add something? And we don't have trust in that process. And that is why we need to have a solid system for capturing. So luckily for you, we have built this system for capturing, and I'm going to share that with you right now. The first one that I'm going to show you is called the Save to Notion extension. And I'm first going to show you how this works, and then I'll briefly show you how you can set this up. So let's say I am reading this blog post, The Minimalist Dilemma, right? I'm going to open up this article. Now, the first option that I have is to capture the entire article. So what I do is I go up to this button, which is the Notion saver. And then over here, I'm going to say add to the knowledge database. I can click on that. And then over here, I have the option to copy the entire web page. If I were to do this, I'm going to save this page. I'm going to open it in Notion. Yes, you may open Notion. You can now see that this entire article has been captured into Notion, right? So this would show up in our knowledge inbox during the daily review, which we discussed in the last video, and I can see this entire knowledge piece. But now suppose that actually I don't want to have the entire knowledge piece. So I'm going to delete this page. Let's say I'm reading this and instead I want to just highlight the paragraphs that are interesting to me. What I do then is I add this knowledge piece, right? So I go to Save to Notion, knowledge database, and I'm going to choose content is empty. So now it's adding the empty knowledge piece to my Notion page. All right, so I'm going to show you that. It's an empty knowledge piece. But now as I'm reading through this page, I can highlight the article on the open web. So I can say add highlight because this paragraph is interesting. And maybe I also think this paragraph is interesting. And here I actually want to add a little caption. This really stands out to me. I'm just going to save that to Notion. And now both of these paragraphs have been added to this page. So right over here, I'm already distilling the information from the content that I'm consuming, right? So I can either just capture the whole page or I can just capture these different paragraphs. So that is how we can quick capture information pieces using this Save to Notion plugin. Okay, so the way we do this is we simply Google Save to Notion, then over here in the Chrome store, you can add this particular plugin to Chrome, to Brave, whatever browser it is that you are using. And then when you have that plugin over here, you can connect your Notion account. Over here, say add a new form. You're going to select a page or database. In this case, I'm going to get my personal Notion. I'm going to get the knowledge database, connect it to the knowledge database, and then from that database, you can choose which properties it needs to fill in. So I want to have the name of the article or the name of the content piece to be the title of the entry, right? So I'm going to keep that one. I don't necessarily want an image, so I'm going to delete that one. And then content, it could either be empty, it could either be the web page content like we showed earlier, and I also don't need a template. And then you can save and go back. And just like that, now we've created this option for ourselves to capture any information piece into Notion. So that is the Save to Notion quick capture. Now, the second quick capture method that I want to show you is for personal knowledge, knowledge that we ourselves have generated. So inside of a Notion of Life, in all of the zone dashboards, you will always find this button with New Note. And you can simply press this button and just like that, create a new knowledge piece. And the moment you add it, it's automatically gone from this view. And that's because there's a filter that says only show knowledge pieces here that have no name. So the moment we add a name, it automatically disappears. And you can see this button is in each and every zone. Now, sometimes we don't want to create an entire knowledge piece. That might be too much. So the first thing that we can do is actually add something to the scratchpad. And this right here is a synced Notion block. And what that means is that any change I make over here is displayed in all of the different instances, right? So this block is also on all of these pages, and you can always add anything to this scratchpad. So you can use this for very tiny ideas and mind farts, and then we can use the notes for when we really want to deepen our understanding of a knowledge piece. And we'll cover that later in this video during the knowledge processing section. But basically, this is how we can quickly capture knowledge into our system. Now, there is one more way to quick capture information. This is the one that I personally use. If you want the video on how to do this, let me know. I'm not going to show it right now because it's too complicated. But basically, I have a keyboard shortcut that instantly allows me to capture information. And just like that, it's gone, right? So it's a keyboard shortcut, very easy to do that. If this video is valuable to you, then please like and subscribe down below. It helps a lot and it is greatly appreciated. Okay, so the last step of this quick capturing process is the emptying of our inboxes. And that is also the step into the next part, which is knowledge processing. So when we have our daily review, right? We discussed the daily review in the last video. We open that one up, scroll down to our shutdown routine, and then over here we have the empty inbox section. And this is where we take all the knowledge that we have captured and we process it. So just to wrap up this part of the chapter, what we've done is we've encountered a piece of information, we've captured it into our system. We might have already consumed or distilled it if we used, for example, the feature where we select these paragraphs and are already consuming it live. And then the next thing that we want to do is we want to create a full knowledge piece and we want to process this. So let's see what that looks like inside of our system. So we are going to go back to this page over here. The first step is we want to open up our general scratchpad, as these are the smallest forms of ideas, the smallest forms of knowledge that we have. Now, usually things in the scratchpad turn out not to be valuable, turn out not to be important, so we can just easily delete them if we no longer need them. But sometimes they are things that we might want to remember, but they're just super duper small, in which case we can drag them into the extended scratchpad. And later on, when your scratchpad is becoming really large, there's some techniques that you can apply to filter through those ideas. But these are really just things that are like 1 or 2 or 3 lines long. So the scratchpad is really just very tiny pieces of information that don't really deserve a full-on knowledge piece. Alternatively, we might have something on the scratchpad that we actually want to turn into a knowledge piece. And in that case, we can grab it over here and just drag it in like that. And now it's become part of the knowledge flow inside of the knowledge database. Now over here, we now have these 3 different knowledge pieces, and we can decide to create or transform these knowledge pieces right here, right now. We can also just process them first, and then later on, we will get back to them. So let's go back into the system here. And let's say I don't want to expand on this knowledge. Like realistically, usually when you're doing your shutdown routine, you don't really want to go too deep into creating or transforming new knowledge. So what we're going to do is we're going to assign it the proper properties. And this is really the processing part of our knowledge. So the first thing that I do is I'm going to click the source from which I got this. And this one was an article that I read on the Meaning Crafter blog. And then the next thing that we can do is we can give a rating to a knowledge piece. Now, if I want this knowledge piece to be instantly completed, I give it a 1-star rating, right? The moment I give it a 1-star rating, it is always immediately completed. So this means it is valuable enough that I might want to use it at some point, but it's not that valuable that I want to put any more time or energy into it. If we leave the rating empty and we don't touch the knowledge piece for 30 days, then the status will be turned into archived. And those are really just knowledge pieces that weren't even worthy of our attention after capturing them. So usually they are not that relevant. The other 2 ratings that we can give during our daily review are the 2 stars or the 3 stars. The diamonds, we'll get into those later. Those are for the later reviews. For now, we can either choose 2 stars or 3 stars. And in that case, you can see over here, the status is keep exploring. And if we go into this formula, you can see that if it's 2 stars, we have 30 days to keep exploring. If it's 3 stars, then we have 60 days to keep exploring. So if we give it a rating of 2 stars, 30 days, 3 stars, 60 days. So the higher the rating, the longer that we have to explore a knowledge piece. Then the next property that we assign is the type. Now, very often the type is already determined when we use a template. So for example, let me just open up this page over here. You can see that there are 3 different templates that we can use for our knowledge pieces, which we are going to explore in a little bit. The moment I click one of these templates, you can see that the type is already put into the proper type. So usually you don't have to do this, but if something doesn't have a type yet, then you can assign it the proper type over here. Then the last 2 things that we do is we either assign a knowledge classification, a project, or both. Now, usually you want to aim for a project. Like I said, it's good to have actionable information. Now, sometimes you might also want to add both a classification and a project. I rarely ever do this, but this is an option. So you could, for example, say this is part of the creative area, and then it's also part of this project called A Notion of Life, Sales and Marketing. And the moment I click that, the entry automatically disappears. And the way that this works is that there is a filter that says the project tracker needs to be empty. So the moment a knowledge piece is connected to a project, it automatically disappears from this database. Now, if it's the case that you don't want to assign a project, then over here, there is this little dot page. You can simply type dot, link that page, and then it also disappears. So there's a filter here that says if the knowledge classification contains this dot, then the knowledge piece should disappear. So that is there just for the case where you want to assign only a knowledge classification. So like that, we go through our knowledge pieces, we do the source, that's my mind, rating that a 2, I'm going to call that a creation, and it's related to this project, and boom, now it is gone. That is how we process our information in the knowledge database. Now, as long as the knowledge is on keep exploring or to explore, that means that we keep returning to this create and transformation part of the process. So as long as it's still active and it hasn't reached one of these thresholds to be completed, we want to keep returning to it and transforming it. And that is why we have the knowledge zone. And inside of the knowledge zone, over here, you can see a linked view of the knowledge database that is showing all of the keep exploring items, and this one is showing all of the to explore items. So let's just take some time to cover this. What we have over here is a database, and I'll just show you the title for now, which is the knowledge database, right? So this is the original knowledge database. You can see the one we covered in the beginning of this video. And we have a linked version of that, so you can always recognize that with the little arrow. We have a linked version of that in our knowledge zone. Okay, so I'm going to hide that title again. Then we have a standard table layout, but what we've done is we've grouped this layout by the type. So with a grouping, you can basically say you want to group certain entries in a particular category. So for example, you could group it by rating, right? Then we have all our knowledge pieces by rating. But for this one, we have it grouped by the type. And then over here, you can see all of the creation knowledge pieces that I have on Keep Exploring, right? So these are all the things that I'm still exploring. Then over here, we have that days left formula that I covered briefly in the beginning of the video. What this formula does, it is basically checking the conditions. So how high is the rating? How many days does that specific piece of information deserve if it has that rating? And then how many days are still left? So for example, if this piece of information has 30 days, and the reason that it has 30 days is because it has 2 stars, right? If we were to say that it had 1 diamond, then it has 60 days. If we were to say it has 3 diamonds, then it has 90 days. And then what this formula does, it basically calculates when this knowledge piece was created, what the date of today is, and then subtracts from that how many days this knowledge piece can have. So in 45 days, this is going to show 45. In 90 days, this is going to show 0. So it's showing us the days since we've added it and how many days we have left to work on this knowledge piece. So just like that, we can see how urgent is a certain knowledge piece to work on. And is this still something we want to do before it disappears in 5 days, for example? So I'm just going to turn that back to 2 stars. And maybe to give you a little sense, right? We could have one with 1 diamond, one with 3 diamonds. And you can see that it's sorted in such a way that it's showing us the items by how many days are left. So the things that have least amount of days left show at the top, and the things that have the most amount of days left show in the bottom. And what this allows us to do is to really see like, okay, I only have a few more days. Do I want to work on this now? Doesn't mean you have to. You could still like not want to work on it. But if I want to work on it now, now is the time because these are going to disappear soon. So that is the little days left formula that we have over here. Then we can see the source that this knowledge piece came from, and we can see the rating score. And like I mentioned earlier, the rating score is something that we'll explore at the end of the video. So just like this, we have a very nice little overview of all of our active knowledge pieces. And in there, we can easily engage with them when we have the time. Similar for knowledge pieces that are to explore. They're also in here, and then we can just go into these knowledge pieces and we can work with whatever is in there. Now, once again, the reason that this is important is that we want to keep our knowledge flowing. So even if you don't have the time to visit the knowledge zone, even if for 30 days you don't have the time to visit the knowledge zone, that is fine. The knowledge pieces will disappear, and they have to, because if we only keep stacking and we don't have the time to revisit it, when we only keep stacking, the list is going to become bigger and bigger and bigger. It is going to overwhelm you, and you will not be using the system. So sometimes it's better to just delete things, have them disappear, even if there's part of you that feels like, oh, but maybe there was something interesting there. Maybe apparently it wasn't interesting enough. Otherwise, you would have covered it by now. So move on, right? That is why we have this knowledge always moving. So then the next part that we are going to cover are the knowledge templates. And that is all about transforming our knowledge, making our knowledge even deeper. This is a part of the system that I have completely changed. I'm still testing it out myself, but so far I think it's very, very valuable. So there are 3 different templates for our knowledge pieces. We have the creative notes templates, we have the learning notes template, and we have the meeting notes template. So we're going to start exploring the creative and learning notes templates. Now, these 2 are basically the same template when it comes to the content of the page. The only difference is the banner and the title. Okay, so suppose I have this knowledge piece here that I am creating. Let's open up this page, and I'm going to say this is a creative notes template. Okay, and then over here, suppose I would already have an idea, right? So this is something I just grabbed from my own system. I have an idea here, and now I want to start developing this idea. Then over here, you see knowledge development techniques. You can open up this toggle, and then within this toggle, you have 6 categories of different knowledge development techniques. So we have the conceptual frameworks, we have deepening our understanding, learning and memorizing, knowledge synthesis, knowledge integration, and active engagement. So let's say for here, I want to say, okay, I want to deepen my understanding of this idea. Then I can open up this toggle, and in here there are 4 different exercises. These exercises all have a length of how long they approximately take and a rating of how difficult they are to integrate. Now, over here, what you see is a button, and this is a feature in Notion that allows us to create things with one click. So if I go in here and I'm going to say edit this button, then you can see the conditions that are inside of this button. So basically what is happening is that whenever I click this button, a block is created, and that block is a page inside of this page. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. The second thing that happens is that the page on which this block is clicked is modified. So what is happening here is that on this page, which is the page that we are on right now, a property is changed, and that is the techniques property over here. That one is changed by adding the technique elaborative integration, right? So we could edit any page, but we're saying edit this page to the property techniques, add elaborative interrogation, because that is the technique that we are using. So if I were to now click this button, you see that that technique has been added to this knowledge piece. So by clicking this button, we modify the knowledge page that it is on. Now, I know that this can be a little bit complex. Just rewatch that a million times if you have to, but just know that by clicking this button, we modify this technique. The other thing that happened here is that we created this page, which is called elaborative interrogation technique. Now, if I open this page, you can see this is the exercise that we can do for this specific technique. So we want to identify the subject matter, question the basics, seek answers, expand our understanding, and then evaluate and adapt. Now, this is the action plan that we can apply right here, right now, on this knowledge piece to deepen it. But perhaps you want some more information about this exercise. If you want that, over here, there's a link. You can click on it, and then you go to a page where you have all the information about this technique. So you can see the purpose of the technique, when to use it, how to use it, examples on how to use it. So this just gives you some more information about this technique. And these exercises live inside of this knowledge exercise database. So over here you can see all of these different exercises that we can use. And in there, you have all their information. And the reason that this is added to a separate page is done for efficiency reasons. Otherwise, it can take very long to load new templates because we're continuously generating all of this content inside of our template. So that's why we're linking to the external exercise. All right, so let's just hop back. Right, so one more time. In this button, we insert a block, which is the page with that particular exercise, and we edit the page inside of this knowledge piece, right? We click that button, and now over here, this technique has been added, and then over here, this page has been created. Then what we want to do is we want to just drag this page down here, right? We can collapse that again. And now we're going to say, turn this page into text. Delete it like that. And now just like that, we have the exercise over here. And we can start applying this exercise, right? Choop, 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 choop. We apply, we do step number 1. Choop, 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 choop. We do step number 2. And like that, we can start to really deepen our knowledge. So this is super duper powerful. We have all of these techniques, right? All of these different techniques that we can apply to really develop our knowledge, to not just have some random information floating around. No, this is about deep understanding, about creation, about integrating it into our existing ideas, integrating it into our existing structures. So this is really where knowledge gets created, where your personal knowledge gets created. Now, I can already hear you thinking, that is a lot of time. Am I going to spend 30 minutes on this exercise? Am I going to spend 60 minutes on this exercise? This is the beauty of having the knowledge flowing. You don't have to do any of this, because if you don't, the knowledge piece just automatically disappears. But if there is an idea in your life, if there is a piece of knowledge in your life that you really want to keep developing, keep going deeper and deeper on, you can go as deep as you want. And you have all the tools right here at your disposal to do so. So that is really the beauty of this knowledge template. We have all of these techniques, right? We could just apply a different technique. If we also want to have that one, just apply a different technique. Turn that one into text. With all the instructions right there, we could just follow these instructions, have an explanation of that method, and like that, we can keep developing a knowledge piece over and over. And as you can see over here, this other technique has now also been added. Now, one quick note here, and we're going to explore this a bit more in depth at the end of this video, is that the moment a technique is added, there's an increase in the rating score. And each technique that we add gives a +2 bonus to our rating score. Now, this is important because if a knowledge piece has a certain intuitive rating, right? So let's say, for example, this one has 3 stars. Then if we go into the formula, you can see that if the rating is 3 stars and the score is under 18, then it will be completed. In this case, when it's 3 stars and it's over 18, then the timeline will be increased to 60 days. So each rating has a condition that checks if it's this amount of days since it's been created, then it is completed. But if the rating score is higher than this threshold, then this information piece will stay on Keep Exploring. And the way it becomes higher is by applying techniques. So the rating score is a combination of our intuitive rating and the techniques that we have applied. And I know this sounds a little bit complicated, but basically what this means is that if you apply many techniques to a knowledge piece, it automatically also lengthens in time for how long we can spend on it. So we either can do that by giving it an intuitive rating, we can increase it to a diamond, or we increase it to 2 diamonds, but it can also happen by applying more techniques. So it's a combination of how important we feel that it is and how much actual objective effort we put into something. And by both having those things, the amount of time that we are willing and able to spend on a knowledge piece increases. So it's the combination of intuitive rating and the amount of techniques that we apply to a specific knowledge piece. Okay, the next template, which is the learning notes template, is the same one as the creative notes, except we're using this for learnings. So I think here in the inbox, this article that we captured earlier, right? This article that we captured with our save to Notion. Let's give that a type so that it actually shows up in this page. And now over here, you can see, okay, under the view of Keep Exploring, if I go to the learning type, here is the content that I want to learn about. And here's this article that I want to learn about. Now, the problem here is that we can't generate a template when there's already content on the page. So what we want to do is we want to say, select all of this content, Command X. So we're basically just cutting the content. Then we can say, generate this learning notes template. And then when the template is generated, over here we can simply paste everything back into that page. And then just as with the other one, we can apply these techniques, grab that page over here, turn it into text. And just like that, we can deepen our knowledge piece. And now we're taking this external information and we're turning it into personal knowledge, right? We're pulling from that abundance of external stuff and we're turning it into this very scarce personal knowledge that we have. The last template that we have is a bit more practical, and it is the meeting notes template. All right, so suppose I have a meeting, I would generate a new note, and then over here we have the meeting notes template. I'm going to open that template, hide these properties, and this is a template that we can use whenever we have a meeting. So what you always want to do for a meeting is you want to have an agenda, right? You want to know upfront what it is that we are going to discuss. My personal rule of thumb is have as little amounts of meetings as possible and only have a meeting when it's really necessary. Have a clear goal for a meeting, because we love to meet, we love to talk, we love to have calls, but it's so inefficient, and so often people are not adding anything to the meeting, are not gaining anything from the meeting. So when we do have a meeting, be deliberate about it, have an agenda of topics ready. So over here we can have different topics, and then as the meeting is progressing, over here you can write your key takeaways. You could also write your minutes. You could just put all of the information here that felt relevant to you during the meeting. Now, suppose there was an action item. Take the meeting notes to the bank. That does not make any sense whatsoever, but that might be one of the action items. We can simply drag that into our action inbox over here. Oh, I did not mean to press remove there, just don't remove. And now over here, this action has been added to our action inbox, and it's related to this specific meeting note. So you can see this action is related to this meeting note. And then when we are doing our daily review, of course, at the end of the day, in our action inbox, we have that action. So it's very easy when we have meetings, we have our agenda, we have our takeaways, we can directly translate that into actions. And once again, we have the confidence that that is added to our system. Now, a last little bonus over here is a button which says email notes to attendees. If you click that, it will open up your email client. And then basically you can just paste in the email addresses of people, share this page over here, and just like that, give everyone access to the meeting notes. Cool. Those were the templates, and that is bringing us to the last part of this video, which is the rating of the different knowledge pieces. Now, we already briefly explored how to rate knowledge pieces during our daily review, but what I mentioned here is that during our daily review, we only give it a rating of 2 or 3 stars, but we also have these diamonds over here. So what are these diamonds made for? I'm going to show you that right now. As you might know, in the Notion of Life system, we have different spaced review cycles. So we did the daily review in the last video, but we're going to do the weekly review in one of the upcoming videos. And when we are doing our weekly review, I'm just going to open up this template. Part of this review is a knowledge review. Now, the first part of that review is checking in with all of the knowledge pieces that have a status of either to explore or keep exploring, because sometimes we might not visit our knowledge zone, like I mentioned earlier. And since we want to have a process, a system, right? That's what we're all about. We want to have everything systemized so we don't have to continuously think about it. We also have this moment during the weekly review where we just briefly check in with all of these active knowledge pieces. And that is the moment where we can decide, do I want to go further into this? Maybe just remind yourself like, hey, I should spend some time on it this week. So we have that. And we will cover this in the later video of the weekly review. The second part is the knowledge rating. Now, during the weekly review, we give ourselves the opportunity to upgrade knowledge pieces from the star section to the diamond section. And basically why we do this is, in the moment, ideas often seem way more interesting and valuable than they really are. So we want to give ourselves a little spacing between when we started with a certain knowledge piece and when we actually give it the opportunity to upgrade into this new class, into this class of more importance. So if at the end of the week, I still feel like this particular knowledge piece here is really, really valuable, I can drag it over there. Always press don't remove. It's always going to ask that. It's very annoying, but that's how Notion works. And now all of a sudden this has become a 1 diamond piece. And what you might have noticed is when I dragged it, the days left, so how much longer this knowledge piece stays active, automatically also changed to this 60, right? And we might even say this is a 2-diamond piece. And then it changes to 75. So it both gives us more time to spend on this knowledge piece, and it will also increase the rating score, which will help us later on when we're doing our yearly review or when we're just looking back at our knowledge to really see what is the most important knowledge that we have generated for ourselves. So that is what we do with the knowledge rating during the weekly review. Now we do something similar during the monthly review. Once again, this is a video that is going to come up later. We have our monthly review over here. We go in there. And once again, we have knowledge rating. But now here we have the opportunity to actually take 1 or 2 diamond pieces and upgrade them to 3 diamonds. And 3 diamonds is really the most valuable knowledge that we have. This is the creme de la creme. This is what's going to make the difference, right? If we open back up this chart that we had earlier, this right here, right? This is 3 diamond territory. That is what's really going to make a difference in our lives. So this is where we can add things to our 3 diamond section. Now, the last thing I'll briefly show you is that at the end of the year, we have our yearly review, right? This is the ultimate review. This is where we get so much value. And when I open up this review over here we have all of our knowledge pieces that have a rating score of 20 or higher, which means they have at least 1 diamond or they have 3 stars with a lot of techniques applied to it. You can increase this rating score if you want, but this is an overview of all of the knowledge that we created in the last year, which was very powerful. And here you really see the power of a system, right? On our day-to-day, it might not really seem like we're doing a lot, but by having these processes in the backend in place, over time, we really start creating value, tangible value. We start getting the right information at the right place, at the right time. And yeah, this is why I love a notion of life. This is why I do this stuff. This is, to me, this is the gold. Okay, and then at the end, we also have the resurfacing of knowledge. We are going to cover this in the next video, which is going to be the project tracker. This one is already going on for way too long. Like I said, it's a complex database, complex topic. So let's just recap for now and then call it a day. In this video, we covered the knowledge database, which is the database in which we capture, distill, improve, and utilize our knowledge to create maximal value. We also explored why information is so important, because it allows us to take these random things that are happening all around us, these random blocks of data, and then put them together in a way that makes sense. And then we can use that knowledge that we've created by putting them together to solve challenges. And the better our knowledge, the more difficult the challenges that we can solve, the more difficult challenges that we can solve, the more value that we create for ourselves and for others. And by creating values, we get better rewards, right? So the quality of our information, the quality of our knowledge determines how successful we can be in the things that we want to be successful in. Then we took a look at information in 2023, and what we see is that the quantity of information is increasing. It's increasing by so much, and because that quantity is increasing, so is the variance, and it becomes ever more important to go up in quality, right? Because it's orders of magnitude, and to prevent ourselves from going down. The difference between these two is gigantic, and this is what we want to be doing. We want to increase the quality of the knowledge that we have at our disposal, because that is going to increase the quality of our lives. Then we explored this flowchart of the knowledge database, right? We encounter information, we capture it when it piques our interest, we consume and distill it when it feels relevant. Then we create our own piece of knowledge around it, and we transform this piece of knowledge using these different techniques. We process it in such a way that it's part of our system, right? We give it the right context, the right project, the right class. Then over here, we have this redundant piece of information that I should have deleted before I started this video. We rate the piece of knowledge, and based on that rating, we either keep iterating on it, right? So the time horizon expands as the information becomes more valuable. Then ultimately, when it's hit the threshold, it becomes a completed part of knowledge, and then we resurface it later on in the system, which is exactly what we'll explore in the next video. Like I mentioned, this is one of the most complex parts of the system, so if you have any questions, please let me know. If you have any ideas on how to make this even better, also please let me know. Any feedback is greatly appreciated. If you want to build the entire Notion of Life system from scratch using these videos, using everything that I share, then all power to you. However, if you want to get the template right here, right now, and have everything pre-built, then enrollment for a Notion of Life is currently open. You can use the link in the description down below, get that early bird discount, and buy the template. Now, I never want money to be the reason that people cannot access my material, so if the price is too high, send me an email and we'll arrange something. As always, all of the resources, assets, and products mentioned are linked in the description down below. In the next video, we are going to cover the weekly review, which is a powerful tool that helps us to approach our weeks with clarity, structure, and intent. If you want to follow this whole series, do check out the playlist, start at video 1 and get the full Notion of Life experience. And do not forget, the quality of our knowledge is what determines the quality of your life. So keep polishing up that knowledge, keep going in that exponential growth, and you will create exponential value. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.